at the time, there was a lot of people taking redundancy. It was 2 years before the crash, and setting up cafes. And I'd look in the paper every week. I'd read the Times and the Independent, and you'd see articles of open a Subway, open a donut place.
Yeah.
And then you'd see the capex that was required, and it'd be 300,000 euro.
Sure.
And people would be taking redundancy and putting 300,000 in to a business to set up a franchise.
Yes.
And I'd be thinking, and then you'd give away 25% of your taken before you do anything.
Yeah.
And I would say to my husband, what the hell? I could do this.
Yeah.
I think I said it so many times. He was like, if you're going to do it, just bloody do it.
Very good. The Guardian Irish Business Podcast is a tour around the entrepreneurial industry here in Dublin and across the country. We have the great privilege here at Guardian of working with some of the most inspiring and influential small businesses in Ireland and the people that run them, who are forming and shaping the future of many different sectors of the Irish economy. I thought it would be interesting to chat to and learn from these people, which we do every day, but memorialise it in a podcast which could then be shared with our friends and clients and you, the listener. This morning I'm delighted to have a dynamic powerhouse in the food sector join us for chat. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Breen. Paul, welcome. Good to see you again.
Much. Nice to be here.
Good. Thanks for coming now. So Paul, take us back to the start. Where did your passion for food come from?
Gosh, where did it come? Well, it came from my family. My mum's mum, my granny, was not a head chef, but she was the lead chef in what was Osprestown House in Kildare.
Okay.
So she used to do weddings and things like. She was an old kind of like a family cook, but she was a lead chef down there.
Right.
So I started out doing chefing and kind of moved around different restaurants in the Kildare region. Went to Dublin and then over to the UK and came back home again. I think all Irish come back home at some stage. So
when did you come back home, roughly?
2005. I'd been there for 10 years.
Okay.
I went over there for 10 years. I went to Leeds and lived in Leeds and Manchester.
Right.
Did a spin over there and came back in 2005.
And coming back in 2005, which wasn't a bad time in the economy, is it then that you set up the lovely food company, or had you a few roles in between?
No, in 2005, I went straight back into what I was doing at the time, which was kind of contract catering. So cooking at work sites. So feeding the likes of, at that time, I was looking after Pfizer, which was Wyatt down in Newbridge. So feeding 2,500 people a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner.
Right.
And that sounds insane, but
yeah.
It's easier. Sometimes it's easier to cook for 2,500 people than to cook for 2 people or 5 people.
Okay.
It sounds insane, but it's all, you know what 2,500 people want. 5 people can be very, very fussy.
Okay.
So I went back into that for 7 years. And then in 2010, just at the height of the recession, 2010, I decided I'd like to go out on my own and set up my own restaurant.
Okay. That was a big, bold decision, in that I imagine you were earning good money at that time prior to that in the catering business.
It was a bit of a shock when I did my tax returns the year after, because I was earning, I think it was on nearly 80,000 at the time. Okay. And then when I opened up the restaurant, I paid myself €400 a week.
Okay.
And that was it. But that's all I needed to live on. It's amazing how you can economize back down.
Sure.
So we were living on 80 grand.
Okay.
And then suddenly I was paying myself €400 a week, but I was at work 2/3 of the day.
Sure.
And suddenly everything just fell back into place. So funnily enough, we didn't miss the money at the time.
Very good.
It's a weird thing to say.
And was that the lovely food company Turnure?
That was the lovely food company Turnure.
That was the first place.
Yeah, we opened that in 2010.
Right.
That was the first one I did.
Very good.
I went down my own. It was a big learning curve.
Yeah.
It was a huge learning curve to kind of set up. And at the time, restaurants were, there was a lot of units around. Like, I know there's a housing crisis at the moment, but when I took on that building, it was a little cafe downstairs.
Right.
And the day I look over it, I noticed there was a building above it, a little apartment above it. And I asked the landlord about it, and he said, it's been stood empty for 5 years.
Right.
So I asked him, could I have it free for a year?
Okay.
And he said, yeah.
Very good.
Which is insane. And I tell people this, that he gave me a 3-bedroom apartment free for 1 year.
Yeah. Hard to comprehend now.
Hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
And then he used to say to me, like 5 years later, 6 years later, he was like, you got that for a steal. Yeah. And I was like, when I think it was a 3-bedroom apartment, and I was paying something like 800 a month for it.
For the apartment or the entire?
For the apartment upstairs, added on to the rent downstairs. And he used to remind me of this all the time, but I tied him into a 15-year lease at that stage.
Excellent.
So.
Very good. Excellent. So by all accounts, lovely food, got a great reputation in the area, very successful. You then said, I'm going again. lovely food, Drumcondra?
Yeah, that was 2000. I think I likened that at the time. People say it's like having a baby. You forget how difficult the first one was.
Okay.
And 5 years later, 2015, Christmas 2015, I saw premises in Drumcondra, a little small place again, and I figured I might be able to do it. So went in, had a look at it, and again, when the landlord came to see me, I saw premises 2 doors down from it, and asked him, could I look at taking it on a 6-month lease to use as a backup? At the time, the premises were too small. So what I did was asked him, could I take that on as a 6-month lease? And he gave that to me for free for 6 months. And we put a deli in there at the same time. So I set up the cafe and a deli at the same time.
Great. Very complimentary. You can come to your cafe, have the cakes, have the coffee, and then go next door to Bread and Butter Food Hall?
Bread and Butter, yeah. We call them, because they're separated by a business as well, there's a little beauticians between them. So we give them 2 different names to differentiate between them then as well. So, but one complements the other. So people do come, have lunch in one, and then they'll go next door and buy olives or breads and cakes and things to take away.
Great. And how have you found, in particular, the last three years, has COVID been good for the cafes or restaurants, or what has been the overall picture?
Dare I say it, I'm lucky because my businesses were in the suburbs.
Okay. If
my business was in the centre of town, we would be having a very different conversation.
Okay.
Like they'd be gone. Be gone. There's a chance they'd be folded. And as my accountant, you probably would have been advising me to get out.
Sure.
But because we were in the suburbs and people were working from home, people got tired of feeding themselves. So it was always that little, I'll walk down and get a scone.
Yeah. Well, it was the treat that you could, you weren't at one stage. It's hard to remember this, but we were a 2-kilometer radius from your house. So, even getting out for a coffee to a nice location was really good to be in an area where you could get a nice coffee and cakes, etc.
This is what happened. So, we had a lot of people just came down and kept us going as well. And I've said from day one, the reason the business were successful in the beginning was because we always treated our customers as stakeholders. And that's the most important thing. Like, we give back to the community and involve them all the time.
Brilliant.
So that was a key part to getting them to where they were.
Good philosophy.
Yeah.
You've mentioned giving back and participation in the community.
Sure.
In what ways in particular did you feel you've given back to the community, or how did you do that?
There was a couple of ways, I suppose. One was when we went into Turnure, the first thing we did was get involved with the schools. And we used to do cookery demonstrations in the schools.
Fantastic.
A lot of the teachers used to use the premises for their break.
Okay.
And then we offered to do cookery demonstrations. We'd go in and teach the kids how to make scones or even Rice Krispie cakes.
Right.
And we'd talk about healthy eating and things like that. We sponsored a couple of jerseys for school uniforms and things like that. And that was a bit of advice I got. It was a really good bit of advice, because when I opened up first, everybody contacted me and said, would you sponsor this? Would you sponsor that? Would you sponsor this? Sure. And I said yes to everything in year one.
Okay.
And it must have cost us a fortune. And it's very hard to say no when somebody is saying, we come in and eat with you every day. Yes. Will you sponsor somebody's bike or sponsor this?
Right.
And you never say no. And then another business owner had said to me, do you know what you need to do? Nominate a charity. And then when somebody said to you, can you sponsor this? You say, oh, I'd love to, but we have a nominated charity. Right. And my nominated charities, we still have them today, are the Motor Neuron Society, because I lost an uncle to motor neuron.
Okay.
And cancer, because of my dad as well. I lost my dad to cancer. So we donate a fixed fee to them every month. And when somebody asks me, can we do something? We can if we can, but we still donate to charities every month.
So you have your policy.
It's that giving back in. But we sponsored school jerseys and turned up at school events and things like that.
Right.
And yeah, that was really, really nice.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Great to hear. So I'm aware, Turnure, you've sold it. Why? What was that decision? What was your rationale around that?
Sold it last year, in March last year. It's funny, Turnure and Drumcondra, 2 very different dynamics. The Drumcondra, Turnure is a very established neighborhood with an older demographic, and Drumcondra is a very young demographic, lots of young families moving in there, lots of babies. It's kind of a booming town. Right. The property in Turnure was just too expensive for the same thing to happen. Okay. We had 2 different pricing models across both of the business as well. Right. And like, I'll give you an example. We had a special in Turnure. It was a €25 meal, 3 courses, and it lasted a bottle of wine for €25 for 2 people. It was €25 per person, so it was €50. Yeah. But that was available Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Right.
People would ring me, say, I need it for Saturday. I need a table of 8 for the €25 deal.
Yeah,
And I'm saying, it's Saturday night. You can't have that.
Yeah.
But they'd be saying, we'd go to town. So they were
Sure.
demanding it.
Okay.
But in Drumcondra, and I was never able to put my prices up if I put my prices up.
Right.
It's a weird dynamic. Whereas
Right,
Drumcondra, it's a young demographic. They don't mind going out and spending on the weekend because they've had a tough week, and they say,
Sure.
brunch on a Saturday morning, that's
Yeah.
my treat to myself.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm 30 and we're going to bring the child down as well, and we
Right.
don't care what it costs because that's our treat to ourselves.
Very good.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it was time. I'd had 10 years of the business in tenure,
Okay.
and it was time to kind of hand it over to somebody else. So yeah, somebody else is making a really good go of it right now.
Very good. Excellent. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Going back to when you started the business, am I correct in saying you literally were about to open a lovely food tenure, and you also took a full-time job or a heavy consulting role as well?
So I worked for a catering company at the time, and I left them to open up the restaurant. And the reason I kind of did it was, at the time, there was a lot of people taking redundancy. It was 2 years before the crash.
Okay.
A lot of people were taking redundancy, or a few years before the crash, people were taking redundancy and setting up cafes. And I'd look in the paper every week, I'd read the Times and the Independent, and you'd see articles of open a Subway, open a donut place.
Yeah.
And then you'd see the capex that was required to be €300,000.
Sure.
And
Sure.
people would be taking redundancy and putting 300,000 in
Correct.
to a business to
Yeah.
set up a franchise. And I'd be
Yes.
thinking, and then you'd give away 25% of your taken
Yeah.
before you do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say to my husband, what the hell? I could do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I said it so many times. He was like,
Sure.
if you're going to do it, just bloody do it.
Very good.
And there was a bit of me was brazen. I'm not going to lie. A bit of me was
Yeah.
flippant and brazen, thinking, I'm going to try to do this. So
Sure.
yeah, it's that thing. I got it into my head,
Yeah.
and I
You
just had
wanted
to do
to
it
do it.
then. Yeah, I had to give it a go.
Can I ask you, the challenges of setting up a business in those circumstances, where did the funding come from? Had you saved? Had you planned? Did you borrow? Had you an investor?
No, I had no money.
No money. Okay.
I had no savings. I had a couple of credit cards. I read a lot of books, and one of the books that I read was Brodie Sweeney, who set up the O'Brien sandwich bar. He wrote a book, great book, and I still think it's one of my best books that I've ever read.
Okay.
Called Making Bread.
Right.
Brodie Sweeney. And it was about setting up the O'Brien sandwich bars. And obviously he did that back in the 90s, I think, the early 90s, mid 90s. And he talks about how he had no money, and he went to each bank on a high street and asked to borrow £5,000, pounds at the time, to buy a car.
Right.
And he went into each of the banks on the same day, knowing that the banks at the time didn't communicate with each other. And that's how he got his money to start up his first cafe.
And we're not going to be sued for mentioning that.
No,
That's
I don't think
book?
it's in his book. And then he
Okay.
caveats it underneath saying,
Yeah.
I advise that nobody does this.
Right.
And I went straight out and did the exact same thing.
Very
I wrote a
good.
business case, and I went to Bank of Ireland, AIB, and the credit union at the time.
Right.
I won't say which credit union, but when I sent the application into the credit union, the branch manager called me up, and even though I had lived in England for 10 years beforehand and was not a member of that credit union, my mum advised me. She said, oh, sure, look, he knows the family. And he literally called me up and said, you want 20 grand? Of course, sure, I know your mum.
Very good.
And he gave it to me on the back of the fact that he knew my mum.
Very good.
And I didn't have an account with them.
Right.
And I had no savings with them. So that
Isn't that
tells you the
excellent?
different time we're in now.
And can we just confirm you have since paid back the 20 grand you borrowed
It's
from the
gone.
credit union?
It's
Very
gone.
good. Yeah,
That credit
yeah,
union
yeah.
is gone as
We
well.
just want to be we just want to be strong on that. The loan was repaid.
you're right. You can verify that
Absolutely,
as well.
yeah, it's very
that
good.
was setting up tenure, and obviously tenure is gone. But yeah, it was all the banks then agreed to give me the money.
Great.
So it's smaller pockets. I borrowed 25 grand from 3 different places,
Right,
and
right.
I used 75 grand then to set up the business.
Paul,
initially.
isn't it fantastic? You can sit here today and say, I borrowed and started with maybe 100 grand total, which is possible to do if you have the determination and skills and ability and guts to do it, others won't do it. They want to have 300, 400k, absolute luxury. But you did it, minimal budget. You're sitting here today having had a successful businesses.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because then when I did Drumcondra, I went back to Bank of Ireland at the time then and said, look, we're going to do this again. And we borrowed 60,000. And we set up 2 businesses, which were just shell and core. One was the bread and butter deli was an auctioneer's.
Okay.
So it wasn't fit out. It had no restaurant, no kitchen, nothing in it. So we had to fit that out entirely.
Okay.
And I was about going to builders, and it's kind of what I do now is project management and saying, paint that wall grey, hang that shelf there, put this counter here. and just did it all from the ground up ourselves.
Right.
So
Brilliant.
if you cut out the middlemen, there's a lot of people out there making a lot of money, charging restaurateurs a lot of money.
Listening to you, you're full of energy. You just get going at things. Break it to me. You got married and had kids during this time as well.
Yeah, we got married and then had twins, and I took a few months out of the business. I was saying I'll be a stay-at-home dad.
Sure.
And I was going to take a year out of business.
Yeah, I remember that. I think how long did that last?
5 months. Yeah.
5 months. Okay. Yeah.
I had to get back to work.
Sure,
I was going stir crazy. I love working. I love the buzz of working.
Your creativity, the whole thing.
Yeah, I like being out there.
So break it to me. You sold Turn yours successfully. Drumcondra bread and butter are still there.
They are, yeah.
But even today, you're rushing somewhere. There's another project on. What's in your current life?
So the restaurants, at the risk of sounding flippant, were always a side project. I said, like, I wanted to see if I could do it. And I did it. And I worked in them for a little while. But I didn't want to work there every day. So I took on some good managers, and the managers run the business for me on a day-to-day basis.
Great.
And I go in and out, and I kind of drop in and out and make sure everything is working well, but I let them kind of do their own thing. And I work full-time then as a project manager, setting up and building restaurants for one of the major kind of catering companies here in the city.
Right. Does that give you the opportunity, or has it come across your path where you've seen something and you said, God, that's perfect for me, I'd like to do it myself instead?
100%. But that's it. We're building a restaurant for a client, and the budget is nearly 3 million. So I spend lots of money for other clients, see ideas, and then say, well, I could do that for a fraction of the cost. So it's all the fun of the fair. You spend somebody else's money and then use the ideas from that in your own idea.
Very good.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So
best of both worlds.
You must be 20 years in the industry now? Longer?
Yeah, I'm Colin, I'm nearly 30 years doing it. I'm 48 next month, and I'm doing this since I'm 18. So
right.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, nearly 30 years doing it.
So in all the time I've known you, you've been able to tackle problems, see opportunities. Is there something else on the horizon for you, or will you stick to the knitting and the catering trade and the food sector? Or is there anything that you'd really like to say, I'd like to try that, I could be good at that?
I don't know. I'm always like, so I just finished a course last night. I've done a 6-month course in UCD, a project management course as well. So I submitted my paper last night on that and did my exam 2 weeks ago. And I'm always looking at other things. Right. I'd like to, further my education as well and do a couple more courses. It's wild. I want to do a gardening course as well, because I'd love to do that.
Yeah,
just for my own. Yeah, I'd love to do it. I see there's one in UCD as well, just to be able to, my downtime, to be able to tinker away in the garden and know what I'm doing as well, educate myself. I'm always of the assumption that if I can teach myself how to do it, then I don't need to pay an expert to do it. So, and it'll stick to me. So that's kind of...
Well, thanks for not dumping me, Paul, on the
No, you're fine. that ain't never going to happen. No.
Maybe a quid pro quo, I'd reciprocate. And I've an allotment just down the road.
Oh, yeah.
Very good for your headspace. And if you want a few tips, come on down and I'll show you around.
It's so easy to switch off. Yeah, get into the garden and then just turn off. Everything just drifts away.
Yeah, I'd agree. I say to stressed clients, you should get yourself an allotment. I won't shout now. They say, why? I said, that's exactly why you need an allotment.
100%.
Good for the head.
Yeah.
Good for the head.
Yeah.
Especially in my role, I don't produce anything. Down there at the allotment, I sow seeds. I reap the fruits of my reward 2 months later, 3 months later. It's really good for you. Yeah. I find it's very, very good. Yeah. Looking back on your 30 years, was there, you mentioned your mother, which is perhaps where you got the interest in, but has there been anybody, and you mentioned Brodie Sweeney, who I admire in that the man, O'Brien's, was hugely successful.
Yeah.
Failed spectacularly, a lot to do with Lisa's economy, etc. But now I believe Brodie's back with Camille Toy and hugely successful and really good.
Yeah.
But would he been a person you admired, or was there somebody else who stood out and said, I want to be like that, and he's been or has there been a person who's been a mentor to you and helped you along the way?
Yeah, there's a lot of people took a chance on me. I left school when I was 17 and went to college to be a chef. And then I went in, obviously I worked in hotels, and chefs are grafters, but they don't sometimes have the smarts. So I didn't have the education. The commercial side of it as well. So when I worked for the catering company, I worked for Armark for a long time. There was a manager in that, and he then took me into his department.
Right.
And little things like when I'd be sending an email out to 400 people, because we'd have 400 restaurants, he would say, send the email to me And I don't mind admitting this. He'd say,
Yeah.
send the email to me and I'll check the grammar in it
Very good.
and I'll do everything for you and I'll
Okay.
send it back to you and then
Right.
you send it out.
Okay.
And in the beginning, I used to be very embarrassed sending an
Right.
email to my boss to get him to check it for me.
Sure.
But then he'd check it, I'd read it, and I'd learn from what he checked.
Yes.
And then I'd send it out again, and then
Yeah.
it'd come from me. And he always did this thing where he always said, we. There was only 2 of us in it,
Okay.
in the group, but he always said we. And it's
Very-
something that stuck with me. I
Right.
never, ever say I.
Okay.
When I talk
Okay.
about the restaurant, say, we did this, we did
Yeah.
that, we did that. And then people
Yeah.
always go, who's the we?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it's only me,
Yeah.
but that doesn't matter. It's all
Sure.
about, it's the business, and we
Yeah.
are the business.
Yeah.
So yeah, this guy took a chance on me. And then I think you remember I left the bit. I took like a few months out of the business to go work for him for free. He set up he also left then and he set up a successful clocking in system, a
Okay.
time management system.
Right.
He worked in restaurants before. He
Right.
was one of the big times. He brought Nude to the Nude chain of restaurants.
Okay.
He brought them to Ireland
Right.
with Bono and Norman Houston a number
Right.
of years ago,
Right.
30 years ago. There was one on Grafton Street.
Yeah.
And they, kind of went belly up, and he went into this then as a sideline as well. So he works in tech now. But would I be here today without him? No, absolutely not. So
Can I just go back to something you said there? You said, did you say I worked for free for a number of months?
For him, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long roughly?
Nearly 6 months, 5
Okay.
or 6 months. Yeah.
It's really interesting because in this series of meeting with entrepreneurs, a number of them have said, I worked for free for 3 months, 6 months, a year to get experience or to learn a trade.
For him, it was to help. It was to help him. He had no money, so he was working for free.
Right.
And he was passionate about making this a success.
Right.
And he just kept saying to me, will you help me?
Great.
And at the time I was working in the restaurant. So this was kind of the start of my exit. I had opened Turnure. This was 8 months into Turnure. I had a manager that was helping me and he asked me to help out. So I went to work for him for 6 months. What it also taught me was a tech company is that I hate tech.
Okay.
And I just couldn't work in that industry.
Sure.
It just made my mind boggle.
Right.
And you either love it or you don't.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it, but I would have done anything to help him. So
very good.
6 months was the time that he needed me. And then I went back to do my own thing again.
Well, you seem to have helped people out in life. I'm sure people have given back to you as well due to your nature. You've helped them.
Yeah, 100%. What goes around comes around.
Absolutely.
It's
great.
It's when I was thinking about buying a car, you were the first person I was talking to.
Very good.
And I bought the car that you recommended.
Excellent.
You kept telling me to hang on, and I ended up buying the electric car. So it is that.
Good.
Share the knowledge.
If you don't mind me saying, we got a bargain with those cars, the ID4s. Yeah.
At the time, sure, everybody wants one now.
Sure.
The delay on them is insane.
And I believe we could sell the cars we bought whenever it was for more than we paid for them now, but we need a replacement car, so we'll keep our cars.
I've scratched into a few things there.
Oh,
mine's not worth what I paid for it.
No, good. Okay, good. You also mentioned that you came upon the realization you never wanted to work in tech. Expand on that for me.
It's tech is a very different lifestyle to restaurants. Restaurants are full of people like you just coming in every day, want to have a chat and talk about coffee. Tech guys are sitting in front of laptops getting excited when a program works.
Sure.
I could barely use Excel.
Okay.
So I was doing a lot of sales for him as well and calling up restaurants that I knew and asking them to come on board. So I just realized that I like the creativity side of business, going out, meeting customers, working in restaurants, all that kind of thing. It's just meeting people, and working in an office 9 to 5 every day, sitting in front of a laptop. Yeah, and that's not me. It's definitely not me.
Yeah, I find it difficult as well sitting in the office here. I like to get out and meet the clients.
Yeah. The good thing about like my job is I'm in somewhere different every day. I've been in, because we feed people at work. So I've been in prisons, I've been on an oil rig, I have been in most of the multinationals, I've been in all their restaurants as well. So I've been in all the universities, the hospitals, there's cafes everywhere. So I've been in all of these. It's a funny demographic about where it is, but people have to be fed. Yeah. There's cafes in all these places.
The aspect of my job I like, Paul, and from listening to you, I think it's much the same. So we have 400 clients. Every single one is different. And I'd love to hear their stories and their challenges, their problems, help them through those problems. They're all unique and different.
Yeah.
So like that, you're going to a prison to set up the cafe there. What's the menu? Who's the target audience?
Yeah.
Is there a price point?
That's it.
And yet you're going then to multinational companies who say, just make it so, Paul.
Yeah.
I'd make it nice, right?
Yeah.
And you've got that leeway then and your creativity and expand. So it really, I'm delighted to hear and see, Paul, your passion is still there 30 years on. You're not slowing down.
No, hanging in for a little while. Yeah. I need to get the pensions full. So we've a few years left in us.
Yeah, we'll help
have
you
to stick around
we'll help you with
years.
That. No problem at all. I was going to ask you, was it like losing your baby to lose tenure? And in particular, Lark were the purchasers of that. Have you kept in touch, or how has that relationship been?
The answer is no. It wasn't like losing a baby. I'm not sentimental about stuff like that. I've sold houses in the past, and the memories are in your head. Yeah. It's not tied up in a building. So no, when the party's over, the party's over. You pass it on to somebody else and let them have a go of it. And people used to say, what if you walk by it? And what if you hear he sold it for $1 million? Well, good on him. He put extra effort into it. So no, it definitely wasn't like selling the baby. Do I miss it? No, it's just, it's a part of my life at that time.
Absolutely. Move on, next stage.
Yeah, next thing.
Okay, very good. I suppose one of the unique things about Bread and Butter, you elected to have a pastry chef on site in Bread and Butter. Is that still the case? And do you feel that that's reaped reward for you?
100%, yeah. Right. Yeah. At the time, the Broderick's brothers were making the bars that you see everywhere. And I know the two boys that own Broderick's well. Own, past tense. Yeah, their cakes were everywhere, in every Topaz, in every coffee shop. And it was one of the things that we set out to advertise, that we made everything on site. And then the guys could see the pastry chef working away. And it's something we do to this day. Our cakes are not square. They're slightly off cuts as well. But that's because we make everything ourselves on site as well. And if somebody comes in and said, could you try to make that with pistachio? Yeah, we'll do it for them as well. Try it. Yeah, so it stood to us as well.
Very good.
Yeah, look, we charge a little bit more.
Sure.
But people know exactly what they're getting as well. So yeah, it's something I stand over.
But it's great. It seems to be that you're really in touch with your clients or your customers and take their feedback.
Stakeholders. Yeah, stakeholders. Yeah. If you don't give them what they want, they won't come.
Sure.
Yeah. And I explained this to the staff. I tried to say this when, if we don't have customers, then we don't have money. If we don't have money, we don't have hours. And then it's customers keep the business open. So give them what they want.
Very good. Did you adopt your hours? Did you have to change during COVID? Just speaking of which, I mean, I drove by in particular on a Saturday evening, and I by Drumcondra, and I saw people outside drinking coffee, which we're used to in Ireland, driving by seeing people drinking alcohol outside. But I thought it was fantastic. The sun shining out on the road there, and your customers sitting outside. Has that been a permanent change now, or have you learned, or has there been pluses from COVID?
We're very lucky that we have a big courtyard to the front of Drumcondra. We're one of the closest cafes to Crow Park as well, and we have a big courtyard that seats maybe 50 people. On a match day, I can get nearly 100 people out there.
Excellent.
So we make hay while the sun shines.
Great.
At the height of COVID, obviously the restaurant's closed. So the restaurant was gone, and we availed of the subsidies, and that helped us through that.
Right.
Bread and Butter closed for 1 week in the entire pandemic.
And that was that first week when we were all sent home on the Friday evening.
It was a couple of weeks into it, and it was that they announced the first week was fine, and then I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks into it, they announced that everybody had to shut. And there was only a couple of people that were allowed to stay open. So that night, we shut down, and would you believe we emptied the fridge and the freezer out, filled up the cars, and went to hospitals, homeless shelters, you name it, and we could not give the food away.
Wow.
I had to give it to all the neighbours on the street because all the restaurants had shut down. And they'd all done the same thing. They had turned up with all this food that they couldn't use rather than spoil it. So I went home, and the irony is we went back home, and I walked up and down my street and introduced myself to neighbours and gave them all food boxes as well.
Great.
And ended up meeting all the neighbours that I'd never met on the road as well.
Fantastic.
There was a little old lady who was 92 up the road.
Right. Wasn't that lovely?
It was, look, it was either that or put it in the bin. Yeah. So it was a bit strange turning up.
Would you mind just confirming your address there so I can buy a house next door?
We've moved. But you just couldn't give food away at the time. So we closed for 1 week. Right. But then outside of that, Bread and Butter did all right through it. It was fine. There was people kind of work from home, people coming down.
Right. I just really like to hear that story of giving the food to neighbours, because personally, I think COVID brought a bit of warmth back to Irish people. People said hello to each other again, walking along. It was less stress. Yeah. Nice environment. And I do think a lot of people have retained that. But sadly, I think we're back to blowing the horns in the traffic. The traffic is very heavy. I was out yesterday.
It's wild.
Oh, it's not good. Not good. So Yeah, so I think working from home has been a really positive thing and helped a lot of people to de-stress their lives.
Yeah.
So that to me has been a huge, big plus coming out of COVID.
Without a doubt. Yeah. Like there's a massive mindset change. I became a vegetarian a year ago. I'm an electric car driving, teetotal vegetarian, all in the last few years.
Right.
But it is that lifestyle change. You look at it and you look around you, and like everything that's going on in the world right now, you just gotta, it's whatever little bits you can do yourself. So I don't want to eat animals anymore. I sound weird owning restaurants saying I don't want to eat animals, but that's my personal choice. I don't want to eat animals anymore. And I feel better, all these little changes you make in your life.
Excellent.
So I think that's what we need to do now, because the irony is COVID hit 2 years ago. This moment now feels like the most manic that people have been. That's what the sense that we're getting from customers.
Do you mean personally, that they're under pressure?
Yeah, with the war and the impending potential recession.
Right.
So people that are coming to us, our staff, rents are going up.
Yeah.
The world just feels a funny place right now. So it's time to take stock and take a deep breath and get down to the allotment.
Good point. I agree, because there's a lot of external factors beyond our control. And it is strange in that I personally, I think we have had it quite good here in Ireland now for a long number of years. Yeah. And sadly, a number of the younger people haven't ever experienced hardship. Yeah. They're working a lot of large tech companies, earning serious salaries. Yeah. And being able to do what they want. But look, I'm not wishing doom and gloom, but I just hope if there's a correction, it's small, we can get on with it, cut back a little bit, and everybody's still happy. That'll be my hope.
It's I before I came here, I was talking to some suppliers, and so sunflower oil, I never even thought about this, but one of the suppliers was telling me that sunflower oil is about to hit the same price as virgin olive oil. Wow. Think of sunflowers. Where did they come from?
Sure.
Russia and Ukraine. So there is no seeds. There is no sunflower seeds. There is nothing. The crops across Europe have all been devastated because of the war. So,
well, Paul, if it's of any use to you, I reckon I have maybe 200 to 300 sunflower plants growing in the allotment at the moment.
I let them know. I think they probably need a bit more. But
okay, yeah.
Isn't that crazy to think that sunflower oil, which it sells for about a euro 80 cent a bottle, is about to hit €4 or €5 bottle.
Wow. Right.
That's insane.
Yeah. And this is the cumulative effect I think we're all going to experience. Yeah. The whole supply chain it's going to be a difficult period, but hopefully we're prepared for that. It'll be back and we can do it. Yeah. So looking back, and you're by no means ready to retire in any way, but you're 30 years on to your career. Sitting here today, Paul Breen, the 18-year-old leaving school, walking out, what would you say to the 18-year-old Paul Breen?
Gosh, I'm not sure. I'm a very different person to who I was back then. I think you live and learn. Youth is wasted on the young, isn't it? There's nothing you can say. You just don't get it at the time. You have to go out and live and learn. And the older you get, the more you appreciate things. So
Make the mistakes.
Yeah. Like go off and do what you have to do. There isn't an 18-year-old that wants to work hard in the world. There genuinely isn't. They just want to go off, see the world,
enjoy life.
That's what you got to do. Yeah. And then I think it's weird that what I'm doing now is very much different to what I set out to do. So I think it's a lot to put on an 18-year-old to choose their career for the rest of their life. Right. Yeah. So let it just pan out and see what happens as it goes. It hasn't been too bad.
Sure. When I was studying, and it mentioned that at the time that it was envisaged people would change careers at least twice or 3 times in their lifetime. I've yet to really see, maybe twice, but not the serial job changer or career changer. But maybe it's coming, and maybe that the next generation.
I think so.
Yeah. Will experience that.
It's a potential. They say some of the jobs now that kids will do aren't even invented yet. So which is insane when you think about it.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to comprehend, and maybe I don't want to have to comprehend.
Well, like TikTokers, there was no TikTok 10 years ago, and that's a career now. Like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. So, of all the jobs and positions you had, what has been your favorite? What gave you the most satisfaction, or what are you the most proud of?
I don't know. I love my current job is my favorite job, without a doubt. Throughout my career, my current job, the job that I work for another company, the project manager job. Yeah, it's just I get up, I get so much excitement out of it. The restaurants, I'm not going to lie, they nearly killed me. They were great.
Yes,
but the stress involved in setting up a business and being HR manager, head of procurement, head of bloody everything.
Right.
You never switch off. And I'm sure all your clients will tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
I think there's two different types of people, that those that want to work for somebody and those that want to work for themselves. And the perks of working for yourself is that I can just come in here now and meet you this morning for a coffee and have this chat.
Yeah.
The downside of that is that when I get out, my phone, I'll have 20 missed calls and people will be ringing me about a blown bulb.
Sure.
So it's relentless. So there's that stuff that never goes away when you're a business owner. But that's not to say I wasn't very proud of what we did with the business.
Right.
We employed at the height of it, we were employing 35 people.
Very good.
Now we employ almost 20 people across Drumcondra, and that'll ramp up over the summer. So that's a nice thing to say. That doesn't put money in the bank, and like as an accountant you're like,
but it's an achievement.
It is. It's nice. It's nice to say that we have we're
strange you say what you've just said in regard that your current job is you're enjoying it the most. Having been your own boss maybe for 20 years up to 30 years, right, in that you did work for some people at the time, how have you adopted? You must report to somebody.
I do.
How have you taken that? Because personally, I don't think I could sit down in front of somebody and they tell me what to do. Now, maybe it's not as blunt as that in your relationship or setup, but how are you coping with that after being, if you wanted to paint the restaurant purple, you could do it. You didn't have to ask anybody. How are you finding that?
I have a great boss. He lets me off to do whatever. Like, he trusts me. I've built up a good relationship with him, and he just says, I have autonomy to do whatever I want. So if he says, you just go ahead and do this, and we know you're my best interest in the business. When I talk about his business, I say it's our business. So I look at his business as our own. He
sounds like a clever guy.
He's a good guy. He's been around a long time, and he's a good guy as well. But he trusts me, and I'd never intentionally make a decision that would in any way be detrimental to his business. I'd always treat it as if it was my own. And I say that to him. If I'm putting a point forward, I'd say, oh God, Michael, like, if this was me, and you often ask me, he would say that to me, Paul, if this is your business, what would you do? If he's looking for a piece of advice. So so that's why it works so well that I'm with him. Nearly 10 years, because I went through him a year after opening Tenure. I've been with them that long.
That's a great achievement in itself. I really admire you, because a lot of business owners who've enjoyed it and been successful, maybe they're bought out and they have to stay on for a 1 or 2 year earnout. Many don't last 1 or 2 years. They just can't take the reporting to somebody else, but you seem to have nailed it. Well done. Great. Good. Paul Breen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
If you want to learn a little more about Guardian, you can go to guardianaccountants.ie, where you'll learn about everything that we can do. If you're enjoying the Guardian Irish Business Podcast, please do share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe, like and review wherever you are listening. Thanks for listening. Until next time.